I'm happy to do.
I suggest we have everyone start on mute except Chair Peterson.
Or Erickson.
All right, I'm going to broadcast live now.
Okay. Good evening. Welcome everybody to the meeting of the Parks, Arts and Community Services Commission for this, the 28th of May. We'll call the meeting to order at 6:03 p.m. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone would please stand with me, face the flag, put your right hand over your heart and repeat as follows. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
United
States of
States of
America
America and
and
to the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty and
liberty.
justice for all. All right. Thank you. Let's move on to item number 3, roll call.
Councilmember Ashendorf.
Well, this would be Commissioner Ashendorf, present.
Oh, Stop it. Okay. Commissioner DeSico,
Present.
Commissioner Fay,
Present.
Commissioner Frager,
Present.
Commissioner Rutherford,
Present.
Vice Chair McNabb,
Present.
Chair Erickson.
Present. All right.
We have a quorum.
Fantastic. All right, moving on. Item number 4 is the approval of the minutes for February the 27th. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes? And if not, is there a motion?
I move to approve the minutes from the February meeting.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Let the record request that Vice Chair McNabb made a motion that was seconded by Commissioner Rutherford. Let's call for the question.
Commissioner DeSico,
Can we just say yay or nay, or what's the verbiage?
yeah, just yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Rutherford,
Yes.
Commissioner Ashendorf,
Yes.
Commissioner Fay,
Yes.
Commissioner Frager,
Yes.
Vice Chair McNabb,
Yes.
Chair Erickson.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Now moving on to item number 5, public comments. If anyone from the public wishes to speak on a matter not listed on the agenda, now is the time when they can raise their hand in this format and spend up to 3 minutes addressing the commission.
Mr. Chair, we do not have any members of the public attending at this time.
Okay. With that, we will close public comment and move on to item number 6, commissioner comments. As a way to try to keep a little rhythm here, I'll move in the order in which the participant list is set up, which, as I'm reading it, is Ms. Ashendorf, followed by Mr. Rutherford, Mr. DeSico, Ms. Frager, Ms. Fay, and then moving down, let's see if I can do that, Vice Chair McNabb, and I will follow at the end. So Ms. Ashendorf, do you have any comments?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Chair Erickson. First of all, it's great to be back and see all of your faces. Thank you to the staff and the City Council for keeping our city safe over the last 70+ days. A couple of things that come to mind that have been really important and helpful in this time of quarantine are the City Hall snapshot. It's been really effective to get an overview of really what's going on in our city on a weekly basis, COVID updates, things for the parks and for our seniors, as well as the PD and the fire department. Also, I invite all of you to make sure you visit the city's virtual community center, which is on our website, and there you will find classes and tours and talks for all ages. Let's see. Thank you to the Senior Center. You have done a marvelous job keeping food and the basic necessities for our seniors in the community. You have made calls every other week to every single one of our plus 2,000 and more senior members. And we have received letters every month from the center as well. I'd also like to add that thanks to staff Albert Ruiz, who's been very efficient in getting census information for the Census 2020 to all of our seniors through the Food Distribution Center. And finally, thinking about the 3 skilled nursing centers, facilities that we have in Costa Mesa, it's my understanding that would be Silverado, Victoria Healthcare, and Pacifica. We want to make sure that we keep our seniors and our nursing centers safe during this time of the COVID. And thank you all.
Thank you, Commissioner Ashendorf. Moving down the line, let's move to Commissioner Rutherford.
Thank you, Chair Erickson. I want to echo what Commissioner Ashendorf said. I really appreciate all the work that city staff, the department directors are doing during this time, especially the setup with virtual meetings. I know there's been some criticism of people not being able to attend hearings in public, but there's research done right now of people that are following city hearings. They're seeing an increase in public participation at city hearings. So I just think that's a good sign overall. I think there's been amazing resources available to our residents through the senior center, and I've been trying to share that with anybody that asks. There was also a really great West Side food distribution event with Councilmember Reynolds and Councilmember Chavez that I participated in last Friday, and we were handing out boxes of food to local families. So that was really great to see the community members stepping up and giving back during this time. And so I just also wanted to give a shout out to an idea that I heard at council meetings, and I've heard from Councilmember Chavez and Councilmember Reynolds that, there's a concern for the Park Poor West Side neighborhoods during this challenging time of everybody being stuck at home. And so residents, like myself, I live near Tewinkle Park, I can access that park, but I think, our West Side residents may need more opportunities during this time. So I just really wanted to lend my voice of support for anything that can be done to open up the fields there for park space. Just wanted to throw that out. So thanks again to city staff, to Director Aguilar for your work during this time. Really support and appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Rutherford. On our way down the line, let's go to Commissioner Zico.
All right, like it's been said before, great to be back. Great to see you guys. I'm definitely looking forward to helping the city with input as far as, how we should be rolling out some of these things. I feel like we are a good sounding board and a good representation of the city and able to give feedback to city officials in regards to parks and arts and community services for seniors. And I just hope that the city will continue to utilize us as such, as the representative of the public. Obviously, the public can make comment as well to policies being made, but I just hope the city will use us potentially even more than they have when making policy. And hopefully, if we keep having these meetings, be it via Zoom or one day, hopefully live again, again, we look to help and go in conjunction next to hand in hand with the city and trying to roll out the best possible, policies for safety, but also for the mental health of everybody as well. So I look forward to helping the city with that. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner. At this time, let's move to Commissioner Frager.
Thank you, Chair Erickson. I also want to just echo the thank you to our city leadership for being just so admirable during these times and prioritizing community safety and well-being while having to navigate very complex, many moving part situations. And I wanted to give a shout out and thank you to Trellis and our Costa Mesa faith community for just being so committed to fulfilling community needs and senior needs with they've done the huge food drives over at IKEA, and I actually joined them a couple of times over at the Tower on 19th to just spread joy and resources to the seniors living there. So I'm just super grateful for the servant hearts that we have in our community here in Costa Mesa. It's a special time to be a resident here. And I want to send gratitude and best wishes to all of our favorite small businesses who've had to get extra creative with the ways they operate and serve. and just stay alive here. So just sending tons of good vibes their way as they continue to slowly open and have kind of creative ways of doing so. I've also been able to enjoy a couple of concerts at the camp. Been so grateful for live music during these times. We can only stare at our screens for so long, so I really appreciate the camp and the different musicians who have come together to do those. And I want to announce that there are 2 that I know of, probably more, but summer arts programs going on over at Segerstrom Center and with Pacific Symphony, their virtual summer arts programs. Segerstrom Center is doing their 5 days of Broadway, where students learn and practice all of the wonderful elements of musical theater and how to prepare to take the stage. Their middle school week will be June 22nd to June 26th. Their high school week will be June 29th to July 3rd. And then Pacific Symphony's AXP at Home is a riff off of their Arts Express program for incoming 7th and 8th graders. Will take place June 22nd to July 3rd, and the second session July 6th to July 17th. You can go to both the Segerstrom Center and the Pacific Symphony websites to learn more about these programs.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Frager. Moving down the line, Commissioner Fahey.
Hi, everyone. Great to see your faces. Thank you, Chair Erickson. Great to have this amazing topic about our open spaces and our community services in a forum to get some things out on the table. I absolutely want to echo thank you to our city staff and to our city council members who never could have known what they were walking into when they were elected and appointed and took positions in the years before this to know the challenges that would come ahead. So thank you for everything that you've done, the long hours and nights I'm sure that you've spent to try to keep our city safe. I think definitely, you know, as a parks commissioner and as a participant in our community, it's been very hard, you know, personally and for my community members to have our parks closed as long as they were. And I'm so pleased to see that they are now a lot more open for movement and getting people out and about. And I want to echo Commissioner Rutherford's point about our park poor communities and also just, you know, I have felt so fortunate in this time to have a yard. And I was really thinking throughout so much of this, not all my family members have yards in Costa Mesa. Not all my friends have yards in Costa Mesa. Not all my neighbors have yards. And it was so hard to have those parks closed when they were. I'm so pleased that we've got them more open and would love to just see them continue to be more open for the mental and emotional and physical health of our community, including those with disabilities and seniors that can't always keep moving and need to have a nice place to sit. So thank you for all of that. There's one thing that I wanted to highlight too, a really neat movement in our community by our faith community called the Enough for All Fund. And there's been a number of churches and nonprofits that have banded together. The website is enoughforallfund.com, and it is it's a Costa Mesa centric nonprofit movement of people giving and people asking for their needs, who are particularly those that are cut out of some of the traditional funding streams. So take a look at that if you're someone who's looking for a place to give, or take a look at that if you're looking for to meet some of your needs. And it's been a really neat thing for our Costa Mesa community over the last few months. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fahey. Vice Chair McNabb.
Hi there. Well, good evening. Yes, it's so nice to be together again and see all our commission working to bring more accessibility to our fabulous parks in the city of Costa Mesa. I would also like to thank our city leadership and our city staff for working so hard during this very challenging time. I mean, I think the last time that we met at the end of February, we could never have imagined what life is like today. And so I think that the amount of effort and dedication that the mayor, the city council has put in, all of the city staff, our police and fire personnel, the chiefs, and all of their staff members has really been tremendous, and makes me heartened to know that we live in a community that cares so much. And I would also like to commend our city for having a mask ordinance in place even prior to the counties. I think that that is something that we can do in order to protect each other, our frontline healthcare workers, our frontline workers that work in grocery stores and service industry that are putting their lives at risk by showing up to work every day. So I was really proud that we put that in place early. I would also like to mention that I had the opportunity to attend the Red Cross blood drive at the Senior Center in April, and the staff there, including Angel, what is Angel's last name? I wrote it down here. Angel Franco did such an amazing job. We were able to procure 60 pints of blood for the community. So that was tremendous. And I also got to witness the Meals on Wheels program that distributes food to our needy seniors in the city. And that also made me relieved that I feel like if there is a need, that it can be met. And I also would like to encourage people who do have food needs to call Orange County's 211, because you can be connected with food from that number. And it's really important. The food distribution events that have been put on by the council members have been tremendous. And so I think that it's really critical for us to continue because these hard times are actually, for the foreseeable future. And so we want to make sure that we're looking out for one another. And we also have our wonderful community partners and Share Ourselves and the Someone Cares Soup Kitchen, which provides meals for people in need. And for any individuals that are interested and able to help with the Second Harvest Food Bank, there is what they call a truck brigade. If you happen to have a pickup truck, which my husband does, he has been participating in a coordinated food effort to bring boxes of food to locations throughout the county. He's been to Anaheim, he's been to San Clemente, and he's been to Newport Beach, all senior living homes where food is being delivered by Second Harvest. So that is kind of a cool opportunity. It's quite streamlined and well managed. It is all via text, so you receive a text on days that they need it. So I recommend that as a volunteer opportunity if you're interested. I would also like to commend the Orange County United Way, which has helped provide $500 gift cards to over 75 families in the city of Costa Mesa, and they throughout the county have distributed over $1 million in $500 gift cards for people with critical needs. I've also been honored to participate in the Restore Costa Mesa committee that the city is running. There are about, I believe, 60 community business owners, leaders, civically involved individuals who are been working very hard to assist the city and the chamber with connecting to our small businesses and supporting our locally owned businesses that employ so many individuals right here in Costa Mesa. And the last thing I would just say is that although we are now moving into a new phase of the reopening of the state and the county, it's really critical that we remain vigilant because not particularly much has changed. We still do not have any treatment or therapies, and certainly we are not near a vaccine. So it's really impressed upon us to be wary of protecting, our seniors, the most vulnerable, and our frontline healthcare workers by, heeding the stay-at-home orders when at all possible, and wearing our masks whenever we go out in public. So thank you so much to Director Aguilar for all of your leadership during this very difficult time. I know it's been super hard I would like to say too that I have gotten the opportunity to walk several times at Fairview and at Talbot Regional, and it's been spectacular. So yes, everybody is thrilled to have the parks open again for active recreation, and I know that we can all work together to provide more resources to the community. So thank you all so much. I'm grateful to be a part of this commission.
Okay, many thanks to you, Vice Chair. I'll keep my comments as brief as possible just to wrap up. Walking's been a really big thing. Obviously, it's been the only thing for some of us over the past few weeks. And for a long time, it's been a bit of a dream of mine to walk all the parks and then map them and then make that information accessible. So I've walked the perimeter of about 18 of our 30 parks over the last week. And I've created maps using a mapping app, and was originally, and will still donate this information to the Costa Mesa Alliance for Better Streets, which is trying to enhance the vitality of walking and biking and the safety thereof in the city. But I may also extend, if the city permits it, the information for the virtual community. They're simple maps and they could be housed virtually there. And then potentially at some point in the future, we could put up a small sign at each park that guides people on their smartphones to the map so that they know, even in their own neighborhood, they could walk a half a mile around their park, or a quarter mile, or whatever it may be. So I'm going to continue that process. Like I say, I've got about 12 more to go, and then I'll have that information. I think it could be really helpful for the resident that doesn't have a treadmill or a running group or a group of friends to work out with, or a gym membership, but they just want to enjoy their park and realize that they're getting fit at the same time. So that's something I've worked on. I do want to look at Luke Davis Field specifically. I looked at its usage in March of 2019. It was used for about half of its available hours during a week in March, and that was the height of baseball season. Unlike many of the other facilities that are used for baseball, this facility is locked when it's not in use. So sometime soon, I'd like to understand how we can make that green space just open to people in that area for cartwheels and frisbees. There's a lot of grants out there. I've been looking at them, and the city needs money. So I'm going to continue looking, and as I find them, I'll probably pitch them up to the city or various organizations that can apply for these grants, and hopefully put some money into the city for some of these projects that we all want to see happen, but as we'll find today, have to be trimmed. Lastly, just a personal thank you to all the heroes in my life that have the decency and the courtesy to ask one of their neighbors and park goers to kindly put their dog on a leash. It's a thing for me, it's a thing for a lot of people, and it's part of the national discussion, unfortunately. But with that, let's move on. Let's see, the consent calendar, item number 7, has no items on it, nor does item 8, old business, which should bring us to item 9, new business, item A.
That title is Review of Proposed Capital Improvement Program, CIP, for fiscal year 2020-2021 through 2025-2026. Presentation by Mr. Seth Rahman, Public Services Director, and Bart Mejia, City Engineer.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, it's definitely good to be back, and commissioners too. Good to see you all, and thank you for taking your time and also having me making this presentation. Me and Bart will kind of tag team on this one. Let me share the screen, bring up the presentation. So one thing, Mr. Chairman, you mentioned about the maps. We would be happy to take a look at them too. So if you can send them our way, we can definitely take a look at it and see how we can share that through our bike walk website. So the fiscal year 2021 capital improvement program, it's definitely a lot more challenging than, let me see, I'm trying to move this slide. Okay, there it is. Than previous years. We had a totally different budget, in mind when we started this in January of this year, and we had a list of projects, but then everything changed in March. We had to revisit our existing capital improvement program. We had to go through what we are proposing for next year. So since March, all we've been trying to do is to figure out this budget, and we keep working on that. So some of the changes that we made, for example, on this one is our city council passed an ordinance that required that we allocate 5% of our general fund revenues towards capital. In terms of emergency, we can get a waiver on that one. And this time, definitely, we are going to ask for a waiver because that's a significant amount of money that the city at present cannot allocate for capital projects. And as I mentioned, we had to cancel and defer many projects due to significant impacts we had to the revenues. Our primary funding sources, we have many sources of funding for our capital improvements. Gas tax, which is a state-funded program, HUMD, community development block grants, park fees, all these form our capital improvement. Many of these funds are restricted. For example, we cannot use gas tax in parks, and parks cannot be used to fix streets. So we have some restrictions on how these funds can be used. The only one that's totally unrestricted is general fund, which is capital improvement fund in this list. And as I mentioned, we are limited on how much capital improvement fund is available for the next fiscal year. So what we did is in fiscal year 2021, we just focused on very few critical projects, and we maximized the use of restricted funds wherever it's feasible for specific projects. The CIP is broken up in 6 categories. Energy and sustainability is a new category that got added for starting this fiscal year, and we are excited about that because there are many projects that promote energy sustainability, and so that leads to efficiencies and also potential revenues down the road. So we are looking into that program. Others have been continuing for a long time: facilities, parkways, and streets and transportation. So as I mentioned, we had a big long list of projects. We had 58 projects that were considered. And the way these projects came up is we asked all departments to submit their list of projects. And we also looked at what was deferred last year. So that kind of formed our basis for what's our request for the upcoming fiscal year. And also these are some of the ideas we heard throughout the year too. So they all became part of this 58 projects. But following many meetings and reviews of the budget and revenues, 31 projects are recommended for consideration. This is really hard to say this slide, but this is your attachment 1, I think. Let me confirm. Yes, this is your attachment 1. So this has the 31 projects in this sheet, and in the next sheet, the 32 to 58, the projects that are deferred. So as you can see, it's quite limited. Some of the dollar amounts are pretty small for this year. Our CIP 401 fund, for example, the general fund, is only about $2.2 million. At 5% of general fund, if this year it was $140 million, which is getting reduced. But at $140 million, it would have been $7 million. So we had a $6.9 million general fund allocation for the current fiscal year. But next year, it's going to be significantly small. Other funds have also taken a hit. We're still revising. I just got some information on gas tax. They are reducing their projections. So we keep getting that updates over time, and we keep revising these numbers. But for most part, this is kind of the projects that are being recommended for consideration. I just want to highlight some of the parks projects and our park related projects. Ketchum-Leibold expansion. So we heard about this project from many different sources, and this involves expanding the park to the south using some of the landscape frontage along Victoria Street. So use that. So tear down that block wall and build another fence or a wall at the edge of the sidewalk. So that will increase the park square footage. So this is a good idea that we would like to pursue. Given the size of this park, it will greatly expand it. For the upcoming fiscal year, all we are budgeting is community design, conceptual design and community outreach for $50,000. We think the final cost of this is close to $500,000, but again, that depends on what exactly goes into that expanded area and how the existing park gets modified based on this expanded area. The next one is park sidewalk and accessibility program. This project actually it's a good project that provides for improved access at all the parks, and this one is at Wakeham Park. So where we do provide access improvements to be compliant with ADA. We improve all the walkways, ramps, and railings. This is an annual project, so at this time we are funding $100,000. But I'm not sure if we picked up site yet, or it will be multiple sites that we'll be reviewing. And this is where Chair Erickson, your information on anything that you might observe that some might need improvement as you walk the park perimeters would help to improve using these funds.
Okay.
T-Winkle and Wilson Park bridges. We have 4 bridges in Wilson Park and 1 unimproved bridge in T-Winkle Park. As you can see in this picture, these are wooden bridges that are getting rotted out. They're deteriorating. There is quite a bit of termite damage, and in some cases there are gaps in the railings that we want to avoid. We want to we want to replace all these bridges. So we replaced 2 at T-Winkle Park and they were received well, and we want to do the same thing at this other bridge and do that same project at on Wilson Park as well. The design construction for this one is about $200,000. Again, that particular project was considered before in prior CIPs and was deferred, so we thought we could implement it in the next fiscal year. New sidewalk missing link. Again, this is to improve sidewalks and actually construct new sidewalks where it's not where we don't have one yet. And we heard about missing sidewalks on Charlie and Bernard Street, so those are part of this project. And because of the length of missing sidewalks, we have budgeted $300,000 for this project. Parkway and median improvements. This is to replace any sidewalks and curb and gutter that are damaged by tree roots, and also where we have landscaping. If there is a need for replacing landscaping, we want to replace them with consideration for California native plants, maybe irrigation improvements using drought tolerant. As you have seen, we have added a lot of medians over the past few years, and we need to make some upgrades as we move along. So this is to pay for some of those median replacements. Not actual medians, but the landscape in the medians. Finally, this project is about priority sidewalk repair. We hear from many constituents and also from commissioners and council members about damaged curb, gutter, ramps. So these are one-off projects, isolated projects that we need to take care of. And some of these are again damages caused by tree roots that when we bring to you an issue of a tree damage or tree root issues, you might direct us to replace or take down the tree, or at that time we have to replace the sidewalk. So there is a little funding to make those repairs. Our 5-year plan, that's in your attachment 3, has a long list of projects that some of them are deferred, but many of them are in our master plan that we want to implement over the next several years. So those are in the 5-year CIP. And again, that's so we review the 5-year when we prepare the next year budget, the following year budget. This comes into handy where we look into the 5-year plan to see what did we envision for the 21-22 fiscal year, and what can be advanced, or if there are things that should be deferred further. So that's the 5-year plan. I just added one more slide. So while the list is really small, I just want to point out that we have many ongoing parks projects that are in our books right now. Some of them are underway. Some of them are still reserved for future. And so these are listed here. So for example, Tivinkle Skate Park expansion, we have a couple of conceptual plans, and we were waiting to schedule some outreach meetings on that one, and move forward with an approved concept that we can further design. We don't have money earmarked for design or construction, but we need to wrap up the conceptual design phase of this project. Park security lighting. This is for improving lighting at some of the parks in our city. So that's that project. Jack Hammett Sports Complex improvements. This is to expand the parking in Jack Hammett Sports Complex, as well as to add some storage units for our user groups. Newport Mesa Unified School District, you know about these projects. We have some funding that's earmarked, but we don't have an active project at this point. We are looking at a couple of sites, Davis Field as well as Kaiser. So when we have an opportunity to move forward, we'll bring that to you for further discussion. Shalimar Park improvements, we have money in this particular project. This is kind of similar to the Ketchum-Leibold. This project involves expanding the park further into the street. We have a fairly wide street that used to have parking, and we don't have parking anymore. So our thoughts are we could narrow the street, move the curb out, and create more space for the park. Again, we want to go through community outreach on this one before we go any further. So the project will include community outreach, conceptual design, and then there is some money to do actual design and some of the improvements, but we might have to go for more funding. And this is where we will go for grant funds and other opportunities. There are a few Fairview Park projects that are in the works, vernal pool restoration, fence signage and trail restoration, and the master plan updates. So those are still in the works. Canyon Park, this is to inventory the existing vegetation in Canyon Park, all the native species out there. So that's something that will be an ongoing project. The other couple projects are Victoria Street outdoor exercise equipment. And finally, the Lions Park Playground. As you might have heard, we had to go to City Council when we received bids on the project. The bids came out to be significantly high. So so we spread the project into phases. So we want to keep the project as much with the original design as possible. So it will be implemented in a couple phases. The first phase would be the new playground equipment, new playground surfacing, and redoing the restrooms. So that's still the plan, and staff is working on advancing that project. With that, I just want to point out a couple more things. From the current fiscal year, we had a couple of minor projects that I just want to point out. You'll see it in the next snapshot that I want to give you some advance notice on. Restroom at skate park. It was repainted. It was in a really bad shape. So we redid the skate park restroom and also the flooring. And we are now working on the Angels Park Play restroom also. Then the other one that we did was sports courts at Peckham Park, Wimbledon, and Schiffer Park. They were all cracked. They were the basketball courts, so they were resurfaced. We patched up and resurfaced them, and they came out very nice. We took advantage of this closure and did these projects so that when they're open to use, they are safe for the community. With that, as I mentioned, this is not a final list until it's adopted by City Council. So if you have any comments, we'll definitely take that into account and bring that to City Council for their consideration.
All right. Thank you, Public Services Director Thurman. We appreciate the report. At this time, we'll engage the hand raising process. If you, wouldn't mind raising your hands, I'll go in the order that I see them from top to bottom. And I'll just lead off with a couple of questions I have. A lot of the planned CIPs seem absolutely necessary, and they seem that way from almost a safety standpoint in terms of the wooden bridges that are deteriorating, the curbs that may not be accessible, etc. Can you clarify if there's ever any other funding mechanisms for this? I mean, you even mentioned the curbs buckling due to tree roots or what have you. When does the city choose to use CIP versus other funds that may be available because it is so necessary from a safety standpoint?
So, Mr. Chairman, that's actually an excellent question. And as I told you, we try to maximize the restricted funds to the full extent, right? So the park accessibility, because it is by the street in the public right-of-way part of this of the park, we are able to use so some of them, so that one we had to go with capital improvement funds, but when it is totally on public sidewalk, we are able to use gas tax. So you'll see some of them, for example, on parkways and medians, 12, 13, and 14, they're all funded by gas tax. And the park projects, we are able to use park fees for them. So the T-Winkle Bridge replacement and Ketchum-Leibold expansion, we can use park fees. Again, there's a limitation on how park fees can be used. They can be used for expansion of a park. They cannot be used for maintenance of a park. So this one, while the replacement is mainly for ADA access, so that's why park fees became an eligible category for that one. And Ketchum-Leibold is definitely an expansion, so we were able to justify park fees. with any other project. Let me see.
No, I think it might have just been that sidewalk and accessibility program. To my mind, it seemed as though it was a safety issue, and especially those pictures of the buckling sidewalks. You know, we don't want to let those languish.
That's correct.
Okay. As far as other stuff, let's see. You mentioned a lot of these projects would be in your slides that they were annual projects. Does that mean that they will continue being funded until they're completed, or is it just a one-time allocation for these projects?
So when we say it's annual projects, the locations change. So for example, Wacom Park, we did the Wacom Park accessibility improvement. So in the next year, we might do a totally different park. So it's not just one project that continues over multiple years. These are small projects that we finish and then we move on to the next project. But there is annually some allocation based on the demand, the need. Sometimes it could be 300,000 for some of these projects. Sometimes it could be 100,000. So it depends on how much of, for example, on the sidewalks, how much are we replacing. On the same thing with parkway and median improvements, it depends on the extent of what we can do. Again, the limitation is how much gas tax is available, for example, on this one. And we want to do, and we have all these needs. We want to improve alleys, we want to improve streets, we want to improve sidewalks. So we have all these needs and we try to balance them out.
Okay, and last one, I'll make it quick, but there is a column for grants. And I guess
Yes.
my question is, you know, how does the city remain, keep visibility to available grants, and so that we don't inadvertently let them pass by, or what mechanisms are in place to keep in front of those funding mechanisms as they become available?
We do follow grants very closely. Acting Department Director Yvette Aguilar and myself, and our staff, we all track various grant sources, federal, state, and local sources. And we also have services of an outside consultant, Townsend Public Affairs. So we all work together annually, on a monthly basis. We actually go through what opportunities are out there. And our city manager's office also has a big role in this one. So we track opportunities, and then as they come along, we definitely see what qualifies and we go after them. And we also try to use our legislative liaisons in that effort. For example, we were able to secure almost $1 million for Lions Park projects last fiscal year. And so we use different sources to get this.
Great. Well, thank you. That'll wrap it up for me. I see, let's see, Commissioner Ashendorf, followed by Vice Chair McNabb. Commissioner Ashendorf, you have questions?
Just three, please. First and foremost, Raj, can you answer the question, how is the public kept informed on the CIP process?
So Commissioner Ashendorf, this year has been a challenge in doing that. So we had, it took us a little while for us to even develop this CIP program. Mm-hmm. And this is my third presentation this week. So we had one on Tuesday, Wednesday, and now Thursday. And then it's going to go back to council again on June 9th. And I think there's a community meeting on June 11th. I need to confirm that. But I think that's fine before the final budget adoption on June 16th. So we have opportunities available for public to provide any comments to this process. Typically, plus we had a presentation to our Finance and Pension Advisory Committee last Thursday too. So we multiple avenues. We made presentations of the CIP, and if there are any comments, we definitely want to hear before our council adoption, and we'll be happy to take that to council for their consideration.
And is this information available on the city's website?
The reports are available on the city's website. Yes.
My next question is relative to the Ketchum-Liebelt Park. So in the design, are you considering then in the expansion to remove the 4 mature trees that are on the opposite side or the street side of the wall? Is that part of the expansion?
So Commissioner Ashendorf, we don't have any plans at this point, but we want to preserve as many trees as possible. And if they're healthy trees, we want to incorporate them in the design. So that's something that we will try to keep. And I think if it's not impacting, any footing or any of the future fence or wall, we would like to keep them. Again, these are the things that we want to hear from the community also, and have a consultant look at the park and see what works best. How can we use that area best? Is that more playground equipment or just open space or landscaping? So we'll see how to preserve them and what we can do with that.
Perfect. And lastly, one item that is not on a list anywhere, and I don't have the history, and perhaps you'll be able to clarify. You mentioned under projects that are not being funded, Balearic Center ADA upgrade in their restrooms. But one of the things I've noticed at Balearic Park in particular is that there's a basketball court there, and not only is the asphalt or pavement for this basketball area severely cracked, but the pavement is buckled, and it appears to be, in my opinion, a safety hazard. So I know we can't put everything on the list, but I wanted to make sure that that was recognized.
Commissioner Ashendorf, we are totally aware of that. I visited that particular location, and we did make some maintenance patches to help, but you're right, that needs a significant amount of work. I'll ask Bart if he can add to anything to this discussion.
Absolutely. I have been to the site too and have seen the surface. It is in need of rehabilitation. We've put together some concepts, so we try to incorporate that at the first opportunity that we have when we have available funding.
Thank you very much. No further questions.
Okay, Vice Chair McNabb, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Erickson. I wanted to inquire a little bit further about the grant funding opportunities for Ketchum-Liebelt, because I imagine that is in what is considered a park poor area, and that we could potentially qualify from some state grants. So have we talked specifically to Townsend Public Affairs about identifying opportunities for this particular project?
So, Chairman, Vice Chair McNabb, it's actually a good point. We did talk to them, and typically what happens is whenever you have a project that you want to get state funding or any funding, they want to see an outreach. They want to see us go through some effort beforehand before we ask for funding. We have tried for projects where we did not do this and we're not successful. So this 50,000 initial investment will help us go through that process. We'll have community outreach meetings. We'll engage the public to understand their needs, what they want to see at the site, and also come up with some concept plans. We can use that and apply for grant funding, and we'll be very successful in getting that. And you're right, that area is prime for getting us that grant funding, and we'll pursue that opportunities.
Okay, great. Thank you. Because I think that that is a good opportunity, you know, for not only state funding, but potentially public-private partnership with some of our partners throughout the city that have been fairly generous in the past. So I think it's always a good idea to try to be thinking about, although I know everybody has been impacted. I think there are some corporations, you know, action sports are so big in our community. We have some very large employers that we could potentially try to reach out to, I think, to inquire about some funding for that. Moving on, as far as the other park and sidewalk amounts, are these numbers kind of averages from prior years, or I mean, is this considered already a belt tightening and a lowered amount from prior years?
But you might too, but these are typical amounts that we budget for these projects. Because we're using gas tax, we did not cut these too much. So, but you can add to this. We always fund 50,000 for priority sidewalk repair, for example.
Absolutely, and that is how I was going to start. That is one of the amounts that is a fixed amount. Some of the other funding amounts for some projects do vary depending on available funding, and some projects are based on actual estimates, like the replacement of the bridges is based on actual estimates. So that one is a custom figure for this project. As far as for some other projects like the Park Sidewalk and Accessibility Program, that's another one that if you look at your detailed form, part of your attachment 2, you will see that in future years, a larger amount has been asked. This year, because of the budget limitations, we requested $100,000. That would allow us to do a few of the parks. As Raja mentioned, we go to the parks that need those repairs the most and try to incorporate those improvements within the funding that we have.
Okay, thank you. And then as far as Boleric goes, I felt like that was approved for last year's budget, but I would have to go back and check, so that I'm kind of surprised. I thought that would have already been completed. Was that not approved for last year's budget?
I don't remember it. I don't think it was in the current year budget.
Okay.
Remember, but I don't think so.
Don't think it was.
Okay. And then I think I had one more question. As far as the repairing of damaged areas with the ADA accessibility, have there been any currently identified safety risks that are, need immediate maintenance?
There are no safety risks at this point, but these are projects that we take up to expand access into some of these parks. For example, the sidewalk, for example, today might end before it gets into the park area, and we'll expand that to go further into the park.
Okay.
So you might have to use a driveway to get in, for example, for a wheelchair, but we want to have a sidewalk access.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for giving us your third presentation of the week. That is really, it's helpful for us. I'm sure, you're clearly well-versed by now, but thanks so much for that. I'll put my hand down.
Okay. Thank you, Vice Chair McNabb. I have 2 hands up. We'll start with Commissioner Rutherford and then move to Commissioner Frager. Commissioner Rutherford?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Erickson. Yeah, thank you, Raja, for making your third presentation. It's very helpful for us to see this. I wanted to echo a point made by Commissioner McNabb. I thought it was an excellent point about the potential for Ketchum-Libel Park and grant funding. I mean, I was very excited when I saw that in the CIP. I really support you including that. Very much appreciate that. It's a park poor area, and I think the residents there will really appreciate it as well. I believe for a fact that is in the SB 535 disadvantaged communities zone. So I think, if Townsend, if you engage him on this, there'd be definitely opportunities for grant funding because it is in that disadvantaged community zone for state funding. I also wanted to ask Raja if there had been any, or also to Bart or Yvette, if there had been any consideration for opening Davis Field this year, given the work going on Lions Park. Obviously, really appreciate you keeping the Lions Park project on track, but I'm just trying to be mindful of the, comparatively park poor area that neighborhood is compared to other parts of the city. And, during this time, they're all stuck at home. So just wanted to ask if you're thinking about that right now, or if there's any plans to put anything in motion with regards to a park in West Side.
So I'll let Director Aguilar answer that too. But one thing I want to point out is we do have the open space on the north side of the library. That's open, I would imagine, right? So that area is available for public to use.
Yes, that's right. Thank you, Mr. Sethuraman. We've discussed it. There are a couple of other just details that we need to go through for the Luke Davis Field. That part of the park has traditionally been closed. It's part of the field user allocation policy. So it's been brought up, and it's an item that we'll still consider, but it's just not being opened at the moment.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, that's all my questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Rutherford. We have Commissioner Frager followed by Commissioner DeSico.
Yeah, mine's more just of a comment. I'm also echoing Commissioner Rutherford and McNabb on just creatively thinking on the grant side of things because of our current environment we're in and the fact that possible funders, corporations, partnerships where people are going to want to maybe invest in outdoor spaces. So just kind of prioritizing investment in our outdoor spaces because that's where people are going to feel more comfortable going anyway first as we start transitioning into the phases of reopening and all of that. So just a comment.
Thank you. Yeah, Shalimar Park also is another one that would be a grant. It's prime for grant opportunities. In addition to Kitchamlai Bolt.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. We have Commissioner DeSico with a hand up. Commissioner DeSico.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Sethuraman, for that presentation. I think this is always very helpful for us to see the projects that we voted on in the past and see that work getting done. I know sometimes it takes longer than we want and things get kicked down the road a little bit, but I'm glad that you have that persistence to stay with these projects, keep them on the books and keep them going once it's agreed upon. And we've had to make adjustments. I did have some questions on some of them. So the decisions on the landscaping for the medians, who makes those decisions about the California native plants? Obviously, there were some decisions made about types of trees that were put in years ago that we're kind of paying for consequences of that now. Who makes those decisions? And are there ways that we're trying to also decrease maintenance costs on those, meaning maybe more creative ways that it's not taking us a bunch of maintenance dollars every year to maintain those medians? Is that always considered too?
So Commissioner DeChico, that's actually a good question. We, usually, the projects have developed over many, many years. So what was done, for example, on Fairview Road, maybe 20, 30 years ago is different from what we did on Placentia a couple of years ago. So back then we would do turf and then we would plant trees. I mean, that's how it was done. Right. Then when Harbor Boulevard came along, we added boulders, and that's a team that. So it's usually when we do these projects, we hire landscape architects, designers who develop these projects, and they use their experience and they use their technical knowledge and what the current trends are, and they try to incorporate that into their design. And it goes through a process. We bring any of these plans, we bring it to the commission before we finalize them and approve them for installation. We are mindful of the cost involved in maintenance. So you see some of these landscaping, especially Placentia, the one and Harbor that was done recently. We try to use as much of drought-tolerant plants as possible, plants that are a little hardy and easy to maintain, and trees that are not of the problem species. So over time, we found out some trees developed pests and they created and they were dying, or sometimes they cause expansive roots. So we try to avoid all those types of issues. The focus of for us moving forward is when we maintain them, we want to make sure that when whatever we replace are durable, are plants that are not that expensive, but also they look attractive. We want to make sure that we just don't put stuff in there that doesn't have any character. So we still want to go with some ability to inspire some creative use of that space and beautify that space too. So
along those lines of creativity, is it possible to not have plants or not trees? We are the city of the arts. Is it possible to do something in terms of art in those spaces that would not, one, it wouldn't take the amount of maintenance, that turf or trees or shrubs would take, but two, also aligns with our city's motto and who we are and what we're about?
I think that's an excellent suggestion. I think as an engineer, I'm not the expert in that one. I would welcome any suggestions and your leadership in that one, and we'll take that. We're definitely good for trying anything. So if there are ideas, we welcome them and we'll incorporate them.
Okay, sounds good. And I think maybe engaging the art community, they may even do a better job than myself on that. And you being the engineering side may be able to help rein in what is actually feasible and what is best as well. So yeah, I'd look forward to potentially investigating that. Thank you.
That's a good suggestion.
And then on the CIPs, I know in 2017 we had that update of the open space master plan of parks and recreation. We're in 2020 now, so that was 3 years ago. My first question is, when we're picking out projects of CIP, how much does that survey that we did, it was a big survey, it cost money, we spent money on it. How much are we really adhering to the recommendations made in that survey when we're picking out these ideas for projects?
Those definitely come into picture. We apologize for that process, as you can imagine, is not completed yet. We still need to go through city council review of that one, and we were planning to do that and early this year and got sidetracked with this virus. We still have that in our minds. We still want to complete that process. So we had few meetings on that too, between Parks Department and us. Many of those projects are actually in our 5-year plan. So we still we haven't forgotten those projects. So a lot of them are in the 5-year plan, and we'll bring them forward as funding becomes available. And some of these ideas, for example, the expansion of Shalimar Park, expansion of Ketchum-Leibold, they were actually some of the ideas that came through that kind of a thought process, which is to expand parks in park poor areas and look for creative solutions. We are always on lookout for park space in the west side and in other areas too. And if there are opportunities, we'll definitely go after them.
because I looked at that when I first got accepted on as a commissioner, and I read through it thoroughly, and I listed the top 5 areas that they felt needed improvement in our city. The top 5, 1 being more walking trails, 2 soccer field count, 3 lighting in parks, 4 open space, and 5 multi-use fields and another swimming pool, that tied for 5th. But when I'm looking at the capital improvements, I'm not seeing as much increasing in walking trails. I'm not seeing as much increasing in soccer fields. I'm not seeing as much increasing in the lighting, the open space. You know, maybe expanding these parks, we call that more open space. I think that certainly fits on that for the number 4 thing. But I'm not seeing, and even projecting out, looking in the next 5 years, I'm not seeing a lot of those needs even being on the books for the next 5 years. So who makes those decisions of what should or should not be on the books for the next 5 years for the parks? And why are we not following what that master plan had guided us 3 years ago?
We'll review the 5-year plan again to look for those. But for example, the soccer, the sports fields, we have one for Davis and one for Kaiser. I mean, those are adding field lighting and also expansion of available sports fields. We also have, in this one, you can see there are new lighted basketball courts at Heather Park.
Yeah, I'm just not seeing it being an overriding amount of money that we're putting towards these things that were identified as needs. And I believe last year, actually, City Council approved $600,000 for the Davis and Kaiser fields. That was on June 18th on their meeting. So my question would be, why isn't that in the budget? They specifically said 2021, that 600,000 should be for the Davis and Kaiser fields to start that process. Why isn't that on there for this coming year?
So Commissioner DeChico, that particular project, actually we had many meetings with the school district, and it requires quite a bit of coordination with them, and which we started doing them. But that $615,000 is nowhere close to what we need for that particular project. Those
Correct.
are in the $10 million range.
Correct, multi-million, yes.
Exactly. So unless we have a good knowledge of where that money is coming from, at least whether we have park fees that are built up or whether we have grants that are available, it doesn't make sense for us to proceed at that time spending that $615,000, because we actually need almost $1 million to get started with the design on that one.
But
and in consideration, and just to point out, in the current year, we were forecasting $1.5 million of park fees, and we received not even maybe a half or a quarter of that. So we are actually in our budget right now, our park fees budget is not fully balanced. We're actually deficient, and our city council might have to look into delaying some of these projects. So this is one of the projects where we don't have a plan at this point, and it could be one the council could decide to say we'll defer it for another 2 years for us to catch up on park fees. A lot of development projects which were supposed to pay the park fees did not happen, and that's why we are behind on them. So there are funding considerations that led us to defer some of these projects.
Yeah, and I understand that. I'm just not seeing it within the next 5 years for those projects like Davis and Kaiser. And I understand it's a big amount, but there are on the books other big amounts like fire stations, spending whatever 8 or 9 million, making another fire station. Those are on the books for future 5 years, but I'm not seeing these things that were identified in the master plan on there.
So, Mr. Sethurman, if I may add.
Yes.
So as you know, the 5-year CIP will list the number of projects that have had the higher priority, but there's another column at the end of the 5-year budget that shows future projects. If you project the lines for these projects like Davis Field, you will see that there is a placeholder for that project, and that's in the $4 or $4.5 million range. Should, let's say, and that's what's important to have a 5-year plan with future years. Should we find a grant in the next year or 2 years that will fund that project, since that project is already listed, we can apply for grants and we can move that project up if funding becomes available. So that column is very important for all of those projects that do not quite make it to the 5-year plan, but we know that we have to work on them.
Right. And I understand that. I guess, I mean, one, I'd like to see it within the next 5 years being planned, since it was already determined in 2017 these types of things were needed. But two, where does that 600,000 go that city council voted on and approved to send to Davis and Kaiser Field? Where does that money go? And because I don't see it here in the budget.
So, Commissioner DeChico, that money is actually in our books. It's in our fund balance. So if you look at our prior, I had a slide earlier that shows prior projects. Let me see if I can bring that up again. So the NMUSD field improvements line that you see is actually that $615,000. So it is still in our books as ongoing project. The funding is there.
I just didn't see it on the capital improvement program that was sent out. So that's why I was wondering where that went.
Yes, because it's a prior allocation. It doesn't show up as a 2021 project. It was allocated in the previous year. So it is there. The project is there with that particular funding. But as I mentioned, the park fees fund at the overall is not balanced because of, we were projecting some revenues and it didn't materialize. So we need to make some adjustments and we need to figure out what projects council would say, let's take funding. It doesn't mean the project is out of our minds. It's just that at this time we have to defund them to balance the budget on park fees, and then reallocate that funding, in the future.
Right. Is there a way you could put that in future capital improvement programs?
Yes.
Another column that says we have this amount for this project in their waiting, especially if you need, like you're saying, millions to do this, we've allocated 600,000. At least we know that 600,000 is in there towards that.
Yeah, we can make that adjustment.
Okay, that'd be good. And then the Jack Hammett Sports Complex improvements, do we have a timeline for that one? I know it kind of got derailed and the timing was off. Then we had bids, then we lost bids. Do we have a timeline for that one?
So Commissioner DeChico, again, we did not lose. So we had bids, and again, the bids came in significantly higher than our estimate, and we believe that's because of the timelines. We think because due to chargers, we had to split the project in implementing in 2 phases. So that might have been the reason. So we have the funding still available. So we'll implement that. We'll again go out to bid on that project in fall.
Man, I wish we could have used this time to do it, because now would have been the perfect time, to get that done when no one's using it.
It's unfortunate. We have so many projects that we have the same ballpark. There's a time to do some of these, even some roadway projects to get them done, but the timing always doesn't work out in our favor with the bids.
Right. And then on that Tewinkle skate park, I know you mentioned coming up with concept and design. Have you considered reaching out to that private-public partnership we've been talking about and reaching out to these sports companies, because I have a feeling they may do a better job helping with the design of the skate park than maybe an engineer or a commissioner like me, or, you know, a mom or a dad who likes skating. They might have better input and be more willing to come side by side if they were involved in the design process as well.
Of course, that's exactly what we did. So we have an expert who primarily designs skate park, but then we had a group of individuals who are users of the skate park and who work in that industry. They were they reviewed some of these concepts with us. So we have a couple of good concepts. The thing is, we want to take it to the larger community now, to engage them. But before that, we want to do one more outreach with this select group, and then go out to the community. So that's our plan still, and we have to wait a little bit for the time we can have these kind of public outreach meetings, but we are ready to do that.
What I'm asking is more, have you gone to the private companies like, say, a Vans or someone else and said, this is our idea, what do you guys think about that? And do you think you'd like to come alongside us, you know, to help us with funding it too?
Yeah, those are the items that will come, you know, at the next phase of the project. You know, definitely because we are at a very early stage at this point, and we will engage private partnerships to implement and to further design it.
Okay.
But you can add any more to this discussion? Anything else, Bart? Or?
Yes, Raj, follow up on what you were saying. The meeting that is pending is the one, as you mentioned, with the group that would help us, the skating community, the stakeholders for the park. That is still pending. As soon as we are available to meet in person, some of these meetings require in-person interaction to be able to grasp and get the ideas. And we will schedule those as soon as we can do those meetings.
Sounds good. And then the Victoria Street Trail outdoor exercise equipment, do we have a timeline for that one? I know that was one of the first things I voted on when I started, but I think that's not done yet, right?
No, that's still on hold at this point, and that's something that we have to review with the council too, because of the park fee issue.
But was the money already allocated for that?
So what happens is, you know, we allocate money based on expected revenues at the beginning of the year. And what we are finding out is the revenues did not materialize for most part last year, for this current year.
Was that last year's though allocation, or is that based on this year's numbers?
No, so it's so for example, right now when I am proposing park fee projects, it's based on next year's whatever we expect in the next year, and also based on our fund balance. It turned out that we had a fairly optimistic projection of park fees for this current fiscal year, and that did not happen. So we have to bring down some of the projects. So adjust for the reduced revenue. So
because that one is also expanding park square footage in our city, correct?
It really doesn't expand. It just uses the space that we already have have within our right of way. So,
but is it considered park space currently?
It's really not a park space. It's basically a frontage, Victoria Street landscape frontage. So it's
right.
not truly a park.
Right. I thought that was one of the advantages of putting in that outdoor exercise equipment, was it was going to be included as park space after we did that.
I mean, we could try to make a case for it. We can see, but it's something, if we don't do it now, it could be deferred for a year or two.
Okay. All right. And then So my last question is about turf fields, as we don't have too many of those in Costa Mesa. What is our plan for turf fields then? I know these are big projects, like you said, the Kaiser Davis, it's multi-million dollars. So if it's not within the next 5 years to do that sort of thing, what is our plan for the turf fields? Is it the user agreement with the school districts to use their turf fields? Or what is the path to get some turf fields in Costa Mesa that are usable?
So, Commissioner DeCicco, we have, I don't think we have access to their, you're talking about artificial turf fields, right?
Well, just about what is our plan for artificial turf, having some artificial turf fields in Costa Mesa?
The only project is with the Kaiser at this point. So when we have our agreement with Newport Mesa finalized and it's approved by the council, then we can initiate that project. And our plan, even though it shows up as an outer year project outside of the 5 year, it doesn't mean that we have to wait till that time to implement it. So it's just sitting out there waiting for. It's just that we have to wait for the approvals from Newport Mesa for us to proceed forward on this one. And as soon as that happens and our council approves that agreement, we'll advance that particular project.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you for answering all my questions.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner DeCicco. I see no other hands raised, and so I'll close discussion on the item. I'll move forward with a motion to send these CIP recommendations forward to the council.
Second.
All right. We have a second from, I think it was Vice Chair McNabb.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Are we ready for a vote? Ms. Green?
Thank you. Commissioner Ashendorf,
Yes.
Commissioner Rutherford,
Yes.
Commissioner DeCicco,
No.
Commissioner Frager,
Yes.
Commissioner Fay,
Yes.
Vice Chair McNabb,
Yes.
Chair Erickson.
Yes.
The motion carries 6-1 with Commissioner DeCicco voting no.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Green. That concludes the new business section of the meeting. Let's move on to the Parks and Community Services Director update.
Thank you, Chair Erickson. Can everybody hear me okay?
Mhm.
Okay. Before I start, I'd actually like to formally introduce our Assistant City Manager, Susan Price, who I believe is on the call, and just welcome her officially to the Parks, Arts and Community Services Commission. This is her first meeting in attendance. She onboarded with the city back in January, so I'd like to just give her an opportunity to formally introduce herself and say a few words.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, this is a super weird time for me, and I just want to make a couple of comments. I started with the city of Costa Mesa on January 8th, and I've basically been in what I call the bunker. I've been in quarantine for most of my tenure with the city of Costa Mesa. So I am just so appreciative of seeing all of you here tonight on Zoom, and that's, I guess, how we're dealing with things right now. But definitely appreciated the dialogue today, and I hear all of the feedback. Certainly, as we look at reopening our community, the Parks Department is probably one of the more impacted departments from my perspective. As we look at, we had to shutter our parks. We've got them back open now in a passive use. There's strong desire to open up in different phases to get some of our amenities back. I appreciate the comments as people recognize we're trying to be safe and healthy around the public guidance, but the guidance is a moving target at times, and it's very confusing for our constituencies. I also just want to acknowledge the staff that are on this call today. This has not been a normal time for any of us. A lot of our staff have been redeployed to respond to COVID-19 crisis for our community. And particularly on the presentation by Mr. Seth Raman this evening, what you're seeing is, from our perspective as staff, a somewhat painful process to take a look at a list of projects that we've had and has been identified over prior years and future years, and all the things that we want in our community are fundamentally on hold for the most part as we rebuild. And for our interim director, Ms. Aguilar, who has really stepped in and stepped up in a major way for our city as the interim director, managing the senior center, being retooled to assist all of our seniors. Somebody mentioned earlier, Trellis. What a fantastic partnership. And, you know, I just couldn't be more proud of the city of Costa Mesa, the residents, the commissioners here tonight. You know, I'm just so fortunate to have landed in this city. It is my favorite city in the county. Don't tell anybody I said that, but it's true. I come from the county of Orange. Some of you may know of my work in the county as the homeless czar for 4 years. Prior to that, I was with the city of Long Beach for 14 years in public health. My background is in community health. So when we talk about ATP, all the work on bike and pedestrian master planning, if you've been to Long Beach, you see some of my fingerprints are on that work, as well as community gardens. Just a lot of experience in that space. And so I look forward to working with all of you to make our dreams possible again in the future. But just know that, you know, with Yvette working on our parks and programs, we've had to close down a lot of our programs, which ties to the revenue that Mr. Seth Raman was talking about earlier. In addition, Costa Mesa, from my vantage point, is a hub in Orange County. We're like downtown Orange County with our arts districts, with our shopping venues. I mean, everything that goes on in this city that we have lost in major amounts of sales tax. It's also impacting our staff capacity. So it's also been mentioned, yes, we are interested in looking at grants. We are interested in looking at public-private partnerships, anything to make things possible. We're struggling capacity-wise, though, I'll be honest. So we have to manage expectations both internally and externally and pull ourselves through this crisis together. And so with that, I took a bunch of notes. I'm not going to go into them now, but I think one of the things that I'm going to be evaluating is when can we restart this group? Initially, it was deemed non-essential, right? But our parks, they're essential. And we're in a very critical point right now on the reopening of our city. And I do appreciate the feedback that I've received just from sitting in on this meeting tonight. And I think that as we move forward, probably after the first of the year, July, I'll look at when these meetings are typically held and see if we can't begin to reconvene them, at least on this function here, if this is where we're still at, to be able to really engage all of you in that dialogue going forward. But you know, your experience is important. Your patience is also important, and your creativity and your innovation as we move things forward. So I just want to thank you all, and I'll turn it back over to the star of our show. No, our interim director, Yvette Aguilar, she's just done an amazing job. And it's not easy when you care so much about the work that you do and you dedicate your career to it, and you're having to make these types of cuts. And so, you know, just acknowledge from my vantage point what the department heads in our city are going through, and the amount of hours that we're working just to keep everything flowing for our community. And I think they're doing a great job. So with that, I'll defer to Director Aguilar. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And thank you, Raja, for that presentation. I think I got blamed for the revenue decrease. And then and then for cutting Raja's CIP budget. I think that's what I heard, but no, thank you for that. That's and we're fortunate to have Susan in our city. And like she said, just a really great team to work with. So I'm happy to be here tonight to be able to provide this update. As Susan had mentioned, it's really not a traditional update or a director's report the way I would do. So what I'd like to do is just update the commission on some of the department's efforts and how we've had to redeploy our staff. And it's been a challenging time, but it's also been a really great opportunity for our department to realize the talent that we have in our department and just be able to really assist our community with some pretty significant and essential services. And the one thing that I like to keep preaching over and over during this time is that it's really highlighted how important and critical and essential parks and community services departments are in cities. So I think that that is one thing that I just really want to highlight, because I think as we've moved forward, that's what we've seen. So the Parks and Community Department has made it a priority over the course of the last couple of weeks to really focus on the COVID-19 pandemic, which has included redirecting staff to provide vulnerable populations, including the senior center. I think we've delivered over 21,000 meals in the last 12 weeks or so to over 500 seniors in our community, which is pretty astounding. And that's been through a partnership with our Meals on Wheels partner, of course. And so the other thing that our staff have been doing is reaching out to more than 5,000 have made more than 5,000 phone calls in the form of wellness checks for our seniors. So that's been, a tremendous effort from our staff. We also partnered with Second Harvest Food Bank to issue the senior grocery program, which has traditionally been done on a biweekly basis, and now it's being done on a weekly basis. So thank you to them for that partnership. We've had staff personally delivering to our seniors, so we get to see them in that form. And so that's just been a really great outpouring from our community. And as was mentioned earlier, that's been a really great partnership with Trellis. Speaking of senior and essential services, I also wanted to update the commission. Last week, the council approved an agreement with California Yellow Cab for continuation of transportation for our seniors. We had a shuttle program that was going out of business in Garden Grove, which was our service provider. And so we had to quickly find another agency that would still continue that essential program to ensure that there was no break in that continuity of service. So effective June the 1st, we'll start that program. We've really been redirecting our resources and our staff to ensuring that we're reaching out to all users of that program. I think at one point we had almost 200 riders. And so we've been reaching out to them, making sure that they're up to speed on the guidelines and how to register for that program so that they have access to it. So it's not a shock to them. In the form of virtual programming, Chair Erickson mentioned this earlier. We have a virtual program, virtual community center online that we are updating regularly. We've partnered with some of our contract class instructors to get some of their items up there in their classes. So we have a virtual tour of Fairview Park. We have online recreation classes that focus on arts and crafts and STEM focused classes, which is really great. And then more recently, we haven't put these up on that virtual program page yet, but they are on social media. We have some do-it-yourself videos that are led by some of our staff. So you'll be seeing some familiar faces, and that's kind of us trying to get back into a new sense of normalness. So that's up and coming. We've also provided some essential services in the form of a daycare program for our essential workers within the city. So we've redeployed some of that skilled staff talent to ensure that we're able to provide that type of daycare setting. And as we start to kind of return to work at City Hall, we anticipate that that program will continue to grow. And then we didn't want to forget about our animals. They're still receiving care. A total of 170 animals have gone through our animal care system, and we have had 161 adoptions. So it's been a little bit quiet, but we think that the stay-at-home order, the positive thing that has come from the stay-at-home order is that our pets are being taken care of, so they're not being lost the way they may have been at one point. The department has been actively working on a reopening plan for various programming aspects for our pool, for our facilities, for our parks, for our programs, for our day camps. And while we don't always have the the thumbs up from our public health officials to move forward with that. Internally, we are working on an implementation process and what that would actually look like to implement, because guidelines are one thing, but the actual implementation of that takes a lot of work and planning. And we've been spending a lot of time doing that and kind of just adapting that as new guidelines come out from the state and local officials. And then as we're able to accommodate some of that traditional programming. And then the summer recreation guide didn't go out this summer or earlier this spring for the summer the way it normally would, but that's only because we've repurposed it to become a community guide. And so in the community guide, you can expect it in the mid to late part of June. And what we're doing is we're including information for our local businesses, for our families, financial resources, food resources, for our seniors. So it's going to be a really a nice little comprehensive guide for our community about how to access resources within and around Orange County to ensure that they have access to that information. That's going to hit 44,000 households. So again, we've gotten really creative with the way that we program and just the way we do things. So I'm really proud of the team that we have. And then on the county of Orange, excuse me, the county public park, I wanted to just update the commission and let everybody know that that project is still moving forward. They're expecting to begin construction on June the 1st. And they expect to complete the project around November of this year. So we'll have that park probably in the beginning winter stages of 2020 and 2021. And then we are meeting with them pretty regularly for about every couple of weeks just to get engaged in dialogue and keep that open. And then finally, I just really would like to personally thank the commission for all of their efforts in keeping us engaged. You know, Vice Chair McNabb was instrumental in helping us coordinate the blood drives at the senior center. Commissioner Ashendorf and Commissioner Frager both have been busy keeping in the arts as the main focus and engaging with our seniors. I know that Commissioner Frager was out with Trellis delivering kind notes to our seniors and help with the delivery of those food items. Commissioner Rutherford, DeSico, and Faye have been active in providing a lot of feedback to us about what they're seeing in the community. So that's been a really important thing for us. And then Chair Erickson has been, and Vice Chair McNabb have been active with our reopening of our park system and providing a lot of feedbacks. And Chair Erickson has, like you mentioned earlier, been visiting our parks and providing another resource for us to include in the virtual community center, which is really important. And so I think it's just really important to highlight that while we haven't met for 3 months, you have not been absent for 3 months, which is really important for our public to know, and for just for me to share that the staff are really appreciative of those efforts. So that's kind of that wraps it up in a nutshell for me. So, and I'm happy to take any questions from the commission at this time.
Well, thank you so much, Director Aguilar. It's, gosh, it's probably a thankless position most days. So thank you. I see one hand from Vice Chair McNabb, and then following that, a hand from Commissioner Rutherford. So Chair McNabb.
Hi, thank you so much, Director Aguilar. I just wondered, is there a time frame for the reopening or partial reopening of City Hall?
Yes, so originally we had anticipated opening up June the 1st. We've pushed that date out to June the 15th to have everybody return to work. We're still following the guidelines from the public health officials. So we're still allowing, a lot of our employees are still telecommuting, and we're encouraging them to telecommute as feasible. So June 15th, and then internally we're also working on reopening to the public, which will include maybe by appointment only reservations or just engagement with the community.
Great, thank you. And then could you potentially speak briefly about the specialty parks, the Bark Park and the skate park? I know those are much more difficult to open, but maybe you can tell us the philosophy as it currently stands on the hopes of reopening.
Sure. So again, we've been adhering to the guidelines from public health officials on that. I know that prior to the closure of the parks, specifically for the Bark Park, we had some concern. We had received some concerns from residents about just the overall the cleanliness and just the spread of disease from animal to animal. And so we've been keeping up with guidance from the CDC and their recommendations on that. So at this time, that's why it remains closed. And then for the skate park particularly, that's a lot more difficult. As far as I'm aware, I don't know that any of the other county parks or skate parks in the county are open. Physical distancing is just really hard to achieve in that confined space. And so we've had, unless we limit the capacity. So we're looking at viable options to ensure that we are able to achieve the guidelines of physical distancing and really just protect our community if and when we reopen and use that. And so we haven't really found a way to do that in a way that we feel confident that that'll be achieved. And so for that reason, it remains closed.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Vice Chair McNabb. And let's move on to Commissioner Rutherford.
Thank you, Chair Erickson. Just wanted to quickly add, I really, really appreciate and I'm grateful for the work of department heads and city staff during this time. Especially want to give a shout out to you all for getting the virtual meetings set up almost a month ahead of other larger cities like the city of Los Angeles. They were, well over a month behind you all. So I just continue to appreciate and support, your work on that front. Yvette and Ms. Green, Raja, Bart, Susan. And I just wanted to ask a quick question idea. I've seen in other parks, they're doing the social distancing circles on grass. I was, as an event organizer myself, I was thinking of that as a possible way to get groups back together on green space. So just wanted to put that out.
We actually just saw that in a news article from up north. So we've been discussing that idea and just discussing internally about where that would be feasible. With the amount of park spaces, would probably be hard to get out there and create circles at every single park, but we're exploring that as an option.
Appreciate that you're exploring it. Thank you. And I also mentioned it to Mayor Foley as well.
Excellent. We have a hand raised from Commissioner DeSico.
Yeah, if you need any help with any manual labor with that stuff, Yvette, I am willing to make circles wherever is needed. So, this commission is all about, we're here to serve the community. And if that means we have to go out and around our parks in our district that we're assigned, make some circles, I think we're all willing to do that. So don't be afraid to reach out to us to help out with some of that stuff too. Because like you, I want to see the parks open as soon as possible, but also in a safe way and a responsible way. So, that's just my main point is I understand the Bark Park and the skate park, that is going to be harder to keep people physically distant 6 feet away from, other households. But with the park spaces we do have, I like the idea of phasing in use of those parks. Obviously, playground equipment, I would imagine, would be one of the last phases because everyone's touching that. But at least in these large green open spaces, what considerations are we taking for being able to open those up? This is the one time that ordinance that I've wanted to get rid of and Cassius wants to get rid of groups no larger than 10 people. Amazingly, this is the one time, maybe this is actually a good thing we have that ordinance, and maybe this does allow us to enforce, groups of no larger than 10 people and people staying, away from other groups as well. So I guess my question would be, in this phased approach you're talking about, is there a phase where the parks become more active for, like, say, one household, but they need to be 6 feet away from another household using that space?
Potentially. And the thing that I want to point out with that is that the guidelines right now still restrict gatherings. And so we want to make sure that we do that in a responsible way. And so it's, there haven't been any guidelines that say 10 or less or 10 or more or anything like that. And so we're just trying to really be mindful of that, because we don't want it to look like we're encouraging gathering by making those type of recommendations. And it just, I always say it's hard to strike that balance sometimes, but I think that we are following the no gathering order right now.
And then that no gathering order, where's that from? Is that county or state?
That was at the state level. There was a no gathering order.
Okay. And has there been talk of when that would be lifted? I mean, I understand the no gathering, like you don't want people from different households getting together, but what I'm more referring to is a family wanting to have a picnic in a park type thing.
Right. The challenge for us is that there's no way for us to actually be able to enforce something like that, by IDing people or checking on people. It's not practical. And so again, it's a consideration. We've had discussions. We're trying to get creative and see if there are ways to maybe navigate that challenge. But we haven't really been able to come to a resolve at this time.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner DeSico, for your comments and questions. We have another hand raised from Commissioner Fay. Please proceed.
Hello. Hi, thank you. I just have to echo what Commissioner DeSico is saying about trying to do everything that we can to open up our parks for people to be able to sit and meet with their own families. And this is America, and I don't think that we need policing to guide our activity in the parks. I think that the parks should give those instructions, and if our people decide to go against it, we've had plenty of time to ramp up all of our other supports with our healthcare facilities to be able to support that. We can advise them to be safe, but from my perspective, I think we need to open our parks and allow families that have people with disabilities, that have strollers to push, that have elderly parents that need to come sit in a park and can't enjoy it unless they get to do that. So I'm definitely supportive of doing everything we can to safely open the parks and not police the parks for people to come and sit and enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate the input from staff, all of your work. It goes unnoticed far too often. So thank you. At this time, it's just shy of 8 p.m. I'll adjourn the meeting at, let's call it 7:55. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, guys. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.